What's up, everybody? I'm Katie.
And I'm Morgan.
And this is For Your Misinformation, a podcast dedicated to empowering women to be more politically engaged so we can act in our own best interests.
Let us break down the problem and tell you what we're doing and what you can do to help solve it.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi, Katie.
How are you doing today?
Good. It was a beautiful day here where I'm at. So I got a bunch of outside time. I got to go to a food truck today too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I'm like, that is a brilliant idea, honestly, for the food trucks to be going around, because that's like ultimate social distancing. Everybody just takes their food and goes.
Yeah.
So it was wonderful. It was a solid day. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. It was terrible weather here today, but there's nothing I'd rather be doing on a Saturday night than talking about Georgia and the state of Georgia politics. But actually, for real, I've been looking forward to this. And I made a pie today, so it was a good day, for sure.
That's a great day. If pie is involved, it's 10 out of 10.
Yeah. So this is a little bit of a different episode. We wanted to specifically highlight each swing state and why each one of them is important. I came up with this idea because I was less than thrilled about Democratic nominee Joe Biden, but I wanted everybody to understand that there's like plenty to still be excited for in your state, even if the presidential nominees don't spark a fire in your heart. I don't know. But I mean, that is definitely true of Georgia. So, like, okay, Morgan, what do you associate with Georgia? Do you know anybody who lives in Georgia?
I don't. One of my best friends lives in Birmingham, Alabama. So that's like close to Georgia. And so I have been to Georgia when I visited her. And so what I associate with it is seeing my first cotton field when we were driving there. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like kind of pretty. And also peaches, because obviously.
Of course, yes.
And also I associate Jimmy Carter with Georgia.
Oh.
That's pretty much it. Man. But I love him so much. And sometimes when I like look at the way Georgia's like portrayed, and I mean, rightfully so in a lot of cases with Georgia, I'm like, this is the state of peanut farmer turned president Jimmy Carter. Like, we can be doing better. Let's do this, Georgia. Come on.
Okay, so that is kind of like what my takeaway. I associate Stacey Abrams with Georgia. My grandma lived there for a long time. She lived on Jekyll Island. So I've definitely been there, but I was a babe. I was little. And I had heard about Kelly Loeffler because she was involved with that like insider trading scandal. And I knew she was a senator from Georgia, but I didn't really know that much about them. But oh my gosh, I feel for you guys. Everything thing after thing after thing that I learned, I was just like, damn, that really sucks. So I don't know. I knew that there was like voter suppression there because I knew stuff about Stacey Abrams, but I didn't really realize how bad and how corrupt it was. But that also means that Georgia has like a ton of potential. So they're obviously a swing state. They're the only state that, for like weird reasons, they have 2 senators up for election. So we need 4 to take back the Senate. 2 Republicans are up just in Georgia alone, and both of them suck. Like a lot. And we will certainly be talking about each of them individually. But there's Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue. Both of them voted to acquit Trump during impeachment. And Perdue voted to confirm Kavanaugh. So those are like the 2 cases that I think about when I'm like, they're like, does this pass the smell test kind of? And it's like, well, if you voted.
No.
Right, of course. Like
truth doesn't matter to him if he voted.
Right. And both,
confirm Kavanaugh.
Exactly.
Trump, to acquit Trump. Like, obviously truth does not matter to anybody who picks Brett Kavanaugh to be on the Supreme Court. Like,
and it's not even like Kelly Loeffler voted against it. She just wasn't in the Senate yet. She, her predecessor retired because of health concerns, so she got nominated by the governor, who stole the election from Stacey Abrams, which we'll definitely talk about that too. But yeah, so there's a lot of work to be done, but Georgia is probably right about like in the middle, I think, in terms of its chances to flip blue. So, I don't know. There's a lot of potential there for sure.
Yeah, the potential like makes me excited. Like, that's why I was excited that we're gonna record this. I'm like, you know what? That's a state that's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, and I wanted to do it first too. Well, one, because it has those 2 Senate seats up, but also because they've been in the news a lot because Governor Brian Kemp reopened a bunch of businesses in Georgia on Friday, including gyms, bowling alleys, tattoo parlors, barbers, nail salons, spas, theaters, restaurants, and social clubs, despite warnings from experts that reopening too soon will do nothing to help the economy while exacerbating the pandemic.
Which, like, is especially bad because they were one of the last states to even recognize the novel coronavirus as a real thing and a real threat. So they're way behind on the game.
Yeah, he was the last person
in the wrong way.
Right, exactly. He was the last person, it seems like, in the country to realize that there was asymptomatic spread. Yeah. Like, he should be embarrassed. But whatever.
He should be embarrassed. No. But again, he's one of those just shady.
He's not motivated. Yeah, he's not.
Doesn't care.
No, none of those pesky values getting in the way.
Yeah, he doesn't it doesn't even occur to him that he should apologize for anything, or that he could even really be wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
But he says it's fine as long as businesses abide by social distancing guidelines, which you can definitely do while getting a haircut. So, I don't know. Sorry, Georgia. We have a lot of hope for you in the future. So, there's some goals. What are our goals in Georgia for the 2020 election? 1, to flip both U.S. Senate seats that are up for election. 2, compete for the state's 16 electoral college votes in the presidential race. So whoever gets to 270 or above becomes the president. And Georgia has 16 electoral college votes. And then break unified Republican control of the state government by flipping the Georgia State House blue. Most of the districts that are hoping to be flipped are around Atlanta, like in the Atlanta suburbs. But if you guys if that's where you live and you want to check and see what your district is like, you can go to swingleft.org to see what's happening there. But yeah, so it's really, really unlikely that the Georgia Senate will flip from Republican to Democrat this year, but it's doable that the Georgia House will. So why do we care? What's going on in Georgia? There's 3 pretty main fucked up things. Gerrymandering, obviously, is a huge issue there. Since 2011, Republican lawmakers have redrawn Georgia congressional maps twice, both along racial lines.
Yeah. Which, when I learned about this, I don't know, it was a couple years ago, and I learned about the gerrymandering specifically in Georgia, and I got so mad about it, and I have not stopped.
Yeah. Well, it's
awful.
They do it just to preserve their legislative majority. It's like you get to make the rules if you win, and they exploit that, and it's so sad. Yeah. But and then to make things worse, they have super strict voter ID laws, and Brian Kemp, a governor with documented records of voter suppression, and they also have incarcerated people who can't vote count towards a district's population, which is a practice known as prison gerrymandering, which I'm not good at explaining, but I found a YouTube clip that is, and this example is actually about a place in your state. Have you heard of Anamosa, Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they're a bad example of prison gerrymandering.
Yes,
so let's watch that.
Are.
Oh, good. You know about it. Okay. So it's about like a two minute clip.
We're in Anamosa, Iowa, where a man got 2 votes and won a city council seat. He wasn't a candidate. He didn't vote for himself. He went to work one day, and his wife and his neighbor voted him into office.
Well, the mayor called me first. Just asked me if I would be willing, that I had 2 votes.
The census counted about 5,500 people here in Anamosa, so that means about 1,374 people per district. In that election, nobody was on the ballot as a candidate. 3 write-in votes were cast, but 1 was for a candidate who didn't live in the district. The other 2 votes went to Danny Young.
I said, well, I'd give it a try.
Problem in this election wasn't voter apathy. It was a lack of voters. The district includes Anamosa State Penitentiary. Prisoners can't vote, but the U.S. Census counts them where they're locked up. There were 1,321 prisoners counted here, so 96% of this district wasn't allowed to vote. Each of the city's other council districts had 25 times as many real residents as this one. So in effect, if you live next to this prison, you had 25 times as much influence.
Having one person represent 58 people and another person represent 1,500, 1,300, you're not getting equal representation.
Also, it means a very limited pool of potential candidates to serve on our city council.
If you're a legislator, you want a prison in your district. Perfect district from the perspective of an elected official would be your house and a large prison, because as long as your spouse is willing to vote for you, you're guaranteed re-election. The question of prison-based gerrymandering is a new question. Some people didn't notice that prisoners are counted in the census, or they didn't question what could be done about the problem. There's 7 New York State Senate districts that would not meet minimum population requirements without using the prisoners as padding. Districts are supposed to be based on population, but when prison populations are used to pad certain legislative districts at the expense of everybody else, we have a situation of representation without population. If the Census Bureau counted people in prison at home, this problem would be over.
So electing Democrats is obviously essential to reenfranchising voters and undoing some of the damage of partisan gerrymandering in Georgia, because there's a lot of issues with prison gerrymandering in Georgia as well. There's a lot that progressive Democrats could do to fix healthcare in Georgia. There are 267,000 people there without health insurance, and that's because the Republicans refused to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act in Georgia, which, again, I'm not great at explaining, but I found a clip about it. It explains what it means for states to expand Medicaid.
The Medicaid expansion makes for great political theater, but there's a real story behind the drama. If, when, and how states choose to expand Medicaid has huge ripple effects on providers and patients. The Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, was built around a triple aim: to reduce healthcare costs, improve quality, and expand access to care. And Medicaid is one of the major levers to accomplish that coverage expansion. Originally, Obamacare required that every state expand its Medicaid program to Americans who made up to 138% of the federal poverty level. That meant 17 million Americans would end up getting covered. But the Supreme Court in June 2012 said that wasn't constitutional, that states got to choose whether they wanted to expand Medicaid or not. That set up a steady stream of states deciding whether or not they wanted to participate. States that opted in early were mostly led by Democrats who supported the health reform law, and by saying yes to the expansion, they got to take advantage of increased federal funding. Many states are sitting out of the expansion, however, for various reasons. They think Medicaid is inefficient, they're worried about being stuck with extra bills, or they're politically opposed to the Affordable Care Act. That's left something called a coverage gap in most of these states, where poor residents probably won't be able to buy health insurance on the exchanges, but they still make too much to qualify for Medicaid. The federal government is trying to entice these holdout states into participating in Medicaid by using creative waivers. For example, in Arkansas, officials worked out a deal to let the state use Medicaid dollars, but they went toward private plans. Other states took notice of that so-called private option and are exploring similar models. The ACA was originally written with the assumption that every state would expand Medicaid. As a result, there are real consequences for providers if states choose to sit out. Our research models show that hospitals in states that don't expand Medicaid will see a few percentage point drop in their margins by 2021. Now, for many organizations, that could be the difference between being profitable and being in the red. Meanwhile, new research by others has found that getting covered by health insurance can lead to real gains in care quality. In Massachusetts, for every 830 people who got covered, one death was prevented every year. That suggests that expanding Medicaid might be a lifesaver too.
So basically what he's saying is that there's a certain number of people that you can figure out if you have more people with access to health insurance, there's a literal amount of lives that you save by every like certain amount that you put on. God, I'm so bad at explaining this, but I don't know.
No, you're making sense. You're making sense. And especially in a state like Georgia, in a metropolitan area like Atlanta, like the lives that they're saving are Black lives. And I think that the lack of expansion to Medicaid, especially in states like that, and the unwillingness of the legislation there is just a testament to these racial inequities that make entire communities vulnerable. And it's shouldn't be considered acceptable in this country.
Right. Well, okay, so right along with that, Georgia has the highest maternal mortality rate in the country at 46.2 deaths per 100,000 births. So that's 46.2. For Black women in Georgia, it's 66.6 deaths per 100,000 births. So, and for white women, it's 43.2. So that is an incredible disparity, and that's just one example. Like they're all like that, but I don't know. Maternal mortality is one that like speaks pretty loudly. So electing Democrats who will expand Medicaid is an essential part of improving access to healthcare in Georgia. And then the last like really big issue that it would make a big difference if there was Democratic control is in gun violence prevention, which is just as much a public health issue as maternal mortality is. Georgia gets an F from the Giffords Law Center for state gun laws. Law enforcement finds firearms from Georgia at crime scenes in other states at more than twice the national rate, and which is another example of why our whole country is only as weak as our weakest gun laws are. And I mean, and honestly, the same is true for coronavirus. Like, we are all more at risk because Georgia is opening up all of their borders and stuff like that. But like, if you're listening to this and you're in Georgia, stick to the strictest, if you're able to. I mean, of course, if you're able to, stick to the strictest coronavirus guidelines that you possibly can, because it is incredibly irresponsible that your governor is allowing this shit right now.
Yeah, and it's also just like so disappointing because this means so many people now have to go back to work, even if they are scared or not ready. And if they, if you're somebody with asthma and now you have to go back to your job because it's open and they need you, and you are afraid to put yourself at increased risk for coronavirus because you have asthma. Well, if you say, hey, no, I'm not ready to come back to work yet, you can no longer get those unemployment benefits.
Exactly.
So you have to go back to work.
It's not just stupidity. It's also like malice.
Yeah, it really is. It's just, it makes me so angry because it's not just stupidity. Right. And I think that's part of like why I'm just like so mad at all these stupid AstroTurf
that too
right now and stuff too. Just like, this isn't stupidity, this is hatred.
Yeah, our media is incapable. They're not prepared to listen to For Your Misinformation for all of your all of your needs. We're giving you the real the real takes. But like, those protests that were going on in like Michigan and honestly lots of states.
Like one right now today in Wisconsin.
Really? I didn't know that. They're tiny. They're teeny tiny. They're funded by very questionable sources. So they shouldn't be covered at all. So yeah, all right. That's all I have to say about that. But
yeah, we don't cover the things people should actually be outraged about, like maternal mortality.
Well, we
rates.
Do. I think we do.
We do. We do. But like we as a country,
for sure.
Katie and Morgan cover those things the best we can, and we care about these things. But like we, a country, don't spend nearly enough time talking about things like maternal mortality, especially as it affects Black women.
Yeah,
just at astronomical rates compared to white women. And like we don't talk about these things. These are the things we should actually be outraged about. We should not be outraged about the fact that we can't go get our hair cut.
Right.
We should be outraged about the fact that Black women are dying at way higher rates than they are anywhere else in like the developed world. And all of these other things about like refusal to expand Medicaid and provide affordable health insurance and affordable health care to American people, and voter suppression and gerrymandering. Like these are the things we should be outraged about, but they're not nearly as much fun, or they're not nearly as like, get people as riled up as seeing a bunch of masked bald white guys out there
with guns, with really expensive guns. Did you see how expensive some of those guns are?
Yeah, those guns
thousands
are
of dollars.
Expensive. And
it's like a subtle flex.
That's like way more like fun to report on and like get people all angry about. And of course I'm angry about those things, but like I'm a lot more angry about the systematic racism in this country.
Well, that's part of the reason that, sometimes we tie stuff into current events, but that's what I kind of hoped the difference between this podcast would be and some other like political podcasts is we don't cover current events so much as we cover like big systemic topics that you'll notice over and over again. So you have better what word am I looking for? Like perspective, but it's not that. What word am I looking for? Better. Oh my God. Yes. The word is context. Okay. So you have better context for interpreting current events that are going on. So yeah, I don't know. That's all you need to know. Mm-hmm. So electing more Democrats to the Georgia state legislature is how we get stronger gun laws passed. So let's talk about the players we got going on in Georgia politics right now. So we got to talk about Brian Kemp, the governor, even though he's not up in 2020, he's your governor until 2022, unless, he does some shady ass shit. So if you work, I don't know, you could organize and maybe get rid of him, but probably not. But anyway, so he's not on the ballot in November, but we got to talk about him anyway.
Yeah. Because this is the guy that's infamous for stealing the election from Stacey Abrams.
Yeah.
Which also it's not, the guy who, go ahead.
It's not petty of us to say, okay.
No, it's not. This isn't just us being like mad.
Voter fraud is not real. It's not a statistically significant thing that's going on. Voter suppression is a very real practice that has incredibly significant impacts on election results. So that's why when we talk about, like, he really did steal the election. He's an illegitimate governor. He really did steal the election from Stacey Abrams, which is totally unlike when Donald Trump claims that there's 3 million undocumented immigrants voting in California. That's not a claim. Like, that's just it's a typical example of him like saying like, I know, or just like flipping the script and blaming somebody for something that they're actually doing. He does that all the time, but yeah, I just want to differentiate between.
Actually, Brian Kemp did that like a couple days before the Georgia election. He was like, Democrats are trying to interfere. They're trying to rig it. They're trying to hack the election. Like a couple days before, they came out with this whole thing about how Democrats were trying to do exactly what they were actually doing, which is steal the election. Right. Yeah, because again, if you get out ahead of something and you say, hey, this person is corrupt and they're doing the thing that I'm doing, but I'm hiding it really well, then you look like the good guy and they look like the bad guy, even though you are absolutely the bad guy.
Right.
Yeah. It's, yeah. So, yeah, they actually did that.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have a couple notes here on what I mean when I say he stole the election.
Give it to me.
All right. So Brian Kemp did not resign from his position as Georgia Secretary of State when he was running for governor, which is a major conflict of interest because what that means is Brian Kemp is overseeing the election in which he is a candidate.
Huh. Sounds shady.
Like, what?
That is like a conflict of interest.
Like, can you imagine if you, like, they wouldn't even allow in a high school, like, student body president if she was also up for prom queen. They won't let her count the votes.
Yeah.
Even though she's student body president. They don't let this thing happen in a high school. What are you doing, Georgia? What did you do?
It would be like if that girl got to pick who wasn't allowed to vote in the elections and she was like, none of these people, all of these people who I've bullied since 8th grade, sorry, we're purging them from the voter rolls.
Yeah, they don't get to vote.
Yeah.
And also, I'm going to count the ballots.
Right.
But yeah, like, so he has a history of opposing efforts also to strengthen the election security, even though the state of Georgia is a state that's already particularly vulnerable to interference because it's one of only 14 states, which 14 states is actually kind of a lot, that doesn't have like any kind of like paper trail confirmation for voting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do an episode about election security.
I think we should.
It boils down to like the only way to vote that is invulnerable has hand-marked paper ballots so that if some results seem skewed or off or whatever, you can go back and you can count them. And like you said, it sounds like 14
like
don't
we
have
had
that.
to do in the Iowa caucus this year. And like, yeah, it was a shit show, but guess what? We got to go back and count all those ballots. Yeah. And like, it's especially ironic too, that he has this history of opposing efforts to strengthen election security, when like under his watch, there was a data breach where 6.2 million registered voters in the state of Georgia's information was released, like basically sold. Yeah. And he just tried to cover it up until a journalist got a hold of the scoop and like made it public. They were not going to let those voters know that their data had been made public or anything. Yeah. Like, and as Secretary of State, he was just an architect completely of voter suppression. He won with only 50.2% of the vote.
Do you know how many?
All of the gerrymandering and everything.
Yeah. Do you know how many voters he purged?
I do. Millions, like literally millions.
Yeah. The lowest estimate was 500,000 and the highest estimate was like 1.5 million. So he, like you said, he won by 50,000, but at a minimum he purged 500,000 people from the voter rolls, which just means that like the example would be like if your grandpa didn't vote in 2016 but wants to vote now in 2020, like that's the kind of person that he could purge from the voter roll. So like you register to vote, you miss one election, and then you show up next time to vote because you think you're a registered voter and Brian Kemp has purged you from the rolls. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. In a single night, shortly after declaring his candidacy for governor, 500 million registered voters were dropped. And then over a period of 2 years was another at least 1.5 million.
You said 500 million. Did you mean 500,000?
500,000. Okay. 500,000. Yeah. 500 million would be
Georgia, how did you
all of the cats and dogs and children and birds and squirrels. Yeah. So yeah, it's just like, and unsurprisingly, of course, the vast majority of those voters who were dropped from the voter rolls were Black, Latina, and Asian. Like, what? Like, of course, yeah. Well, let's drop the people of color from the voter rolls. Yeah. He also closed over 200 polling locations in the state. Also, unsurprisingly, in predominantly African American areas. Because that's how he does. Keep in mind that like this kind of behavior does actually happen in a lot of places, but Kemp is just like so obvious about it. Like he's just like, we are going to close the polling locations in the Black community, and everybody's like, oh, okay, that's unfortunate. There's never been a time in history, like in this country, where Black people have not had barriers to vote. Which, also they tend to vote Democratic. They tend to vote blue. So I think that that's like especially important and like an especially like strong testament to like the flawed democracy that we have in this country.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is when I was going to bring up to what you talked about a little bit earlier, but about like, one, it's really dangerous to be opening these non-essential businesses, so which is his call since he's the governor of Georgia, illegitimately, but he's the governor of Georgia. The alternative was Stacey Abrams. She could be the one making these calls right now, but she's not, which is crazy. But we have a whole episode about Stacey Abrams called "What Would Stacey Abrams Do?" from a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. If you want to learn about, I mean, we'll talk about her a little bit, but like if you want to know all about her, go back and listen to that episode.
She's such a badass.
I know, she's a sweet baby angel.
She has been just like kicking ass. She was just like super young. Like, oh my gosh. She has won so many like awards, and it's just like so distinguished and so cool, and has just like broken ground on so many things.
For sure.
It's amazing. One of my favorite things that she has done was when she was like, this was like 20 years ago, but she participated in protests to get the Confederate flag off of the flag of the state of Georgia.
Oh, good.
Which had the Confederate flag on it until 2001. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, like she's awesome. She also is only 46 years old and has accomplished all of these things in her life already, including should have been the Georgia governor. And she's published a bunch of romantic suspense novels.
Oh, yeah. And they all have really, I haven't read any of them, but apparently they all have like really good applicable like themes in them.
Yeah, like she's like an author in terms of like she's published articles and stuff. Like she's got, a degree from Yale, so she's obviously extremely freaking smart. But, she's got another book coming out that is a nonfiction, and I'm looking forward to reading it. And then also she's got a creative romantic suspense novel gig going. Like, this person can do it all. I love her.
I love her too. Oh, but the one thing I was going to say is that, yes, it's dangerous and stupid for him to reopen his state in the middle of a pandemic, but it's really because he doesn't want to pay for their unemployment anymore. So many business owners and workers in the state don't feel comfortable returning to work, but if they refuse, they risk losing their unemployment aid. So it's kind of, I feel like, the media is kind of burying the lead. Like, yes, Georgia is opening up, but they're opening up to screw over Georgians who are now not eligible for unemployment aid. So
your governor and your government is not looking out for the people right now.
Yeah.
Even if they try to claim that they are, and it's time to get rid of them. It's time to get rid of people that like that.
That alone should make everyone angry enough to like mobilize to get him out of office in 2022. Like, he just doesn't have the right values and temperament to be in a leadership position. And like, I'll say it again, like, voter fraud is a myth for all intents and purposes. There are a handful always of people on both sides, but like, I mean like a literal handful. It's a completely like statistically insignificant number, but voter suppression happens at incredible rates. Like you said, he purged at least 500,000 people, only won by 50,000 votes. In Wisconsin, Trump only won by 23,000 votes. So yeah, these are like pretty slim margins, and yeah, voter suppression is a very real issue. So you got Brian Kemp as your governor. You got Kelly Loeffler as your newest senator. She was Brian Kemp's pick to succeed Senator Isaacson, who resigned in 2019 due to health issues. So again, if Stacey Abrams was the governor, she would have been able to appoint the next Georgia senator, but instead Brian Kemp got to do it. So he picked Kelly Loeffler. She's most famous for coronavirus insider trading, meaning...
Yeah, I'm like, ooh, great claim to fame.
Right. Like right out of the gates. She's like brand new and she's already like, how can I defraud the American public? So she basically, she chose to profit off of the pandemic while downplaying it to the public. By the way, her husband is the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange. So they dumped 7 figures in stock holdings in a series of sales starting on January 24th, which happens to be the same day that Loeffler received a closed-door Senate coronavirus briefing. Not only did she sell off stocks that were about to plummet in value, but then she purchased additional stock in teleworking software like what we are using right now because she knew people would be working from home.
Just awful. Like all the while being like, it's okay, American people.
Exactly.
Like this isn't gonna make the economy crash. You should hold on to your stocks. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna casually dump.
Yeah.
Like way more money than me and you will probably ever have, like combined
for sure
over our lifetimes,
and
just like overnight.
And we only know about it because senators are required to disclose their finances, which presidents are not. So imagine what kind of like investment decisions President Trump and his family have been making in the last couple of weeks. Like, we have no idea.
Yeah, didn't Ivanka like get some kind of trademark on caskets or something?
I've heard that. She also has, there's also Ivanka Trump branded voting machines. So that should like send a shiver through everybody's spine. I don't know if anybody uses them here, but they exist.
Yeah.
I should look into it.
This is serious thing, like stuff. Like this isn't cool.
For sure.
And yeah.
They're
Kelly,
transnational crime
you gotta
syndicate.
go.
She's gotta go. And she also, so she pledged to invest at least $20 million of her own money in defending her seat. So she's basically buying her way. I mean, hopefully not. There's a really great challenger against her that I'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, and really what Republicans use her for is because they think she will signal to white women living in suburban Atlanta that it's like okay and safe to come back to the Republican Party because like, look, this lady is a Republican. So it's gross.
No.
Yeah. So she obviously sucks. Then there's David Perdue, who, do you know anything about this guy? I did not before I started looking this up.
I really feel like I've heard his name before, but maybe I'm just thinking Sonny Perdue.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they are cousins.
Yeah. Like I think they're related, but that's like the most I know.
Right. So I was like, he just seems like your standard run of the mill old. I mean, I knew he was a Republican in the Senate right now. So I know that he's cool with racism and misogyny and stuff. But he was also one of 22 Republican senators who urged Trump to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. So
great.
Happy
Earth Day.
And I'm sure this is just a coincidence. He's received over $180,000 from oil, gas, and coal interests since 2012.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just a coincidence for sure.
Yes. He was also at that meeting where Trump called Haiti and El Salvador shithole countries. He was there in person.
Oh, lovely.
Just for good measure, in November 2019, he blocked a vote on recognizing the Armenian genocide. Just because why not?
Why?
Just
why?
Big fuck you to Armenians. I don't know. And we should all sleep safely at night knowing that he is on the COVID task force to fix the economy.
Oh, great. I feel better now.
Yeah. So those are unfortunately who you guys have leading right now, but you got some like really cool challengers coming up so there's a lot of potential.
Yes.
There's a lot of people that like are worth getting behind. So we talked a little bit about Stacey Abrams. She's amazing. She's started organizations to fight voter suppression. I don't know. Was there anything you didn't?
Yeah, we talked about it briefly on an episode a few weeks back about Fair Fight 2020, which is what Stacey Abrams started. Like everything she puts her hands on is so successful also.
She's
and
so
she's working, she's working to protect the vote, which is awesome. And she's also got her hands in different things to ensure that everyone, especially minorities and poor people, have access to free and fair elections, and also wants to like expand Medicaid and has plans for reducing maternal mortality. She wants to protect working families, public education. Like, she has plans for a lot. Like, I know, like, we always talk about, like, Elizabeth Warren's got a plan for that. Well, Stacey Abrams has plans too. And yeah, she's exciting just as a person to have like fighting for free and fair elections and so many other things in this country.
Yeah, for sure.
Also one of the few people that excites me to think about as a VP candidate.
Me too.
For Biden.
Yeah. I wish, yeah, for sure. It sounds like he's not really considering her, but
yeah,
I hope he starts to.
Me too.
So the person who's running against Kelly Loeffler was endorsed right away by Stacey Abrams. So I immediately, as soon as she sent out that email, was like, great, $5 monthly contribution to Reverend Raphael Warnock, because I will basically do anything that Stacey Abrams tells me to. Yep. So he is a pastor at the same church in Atlanta where Martin Luther King Jr. was a pastor, as if like you needed to know more than just like Stacey Abrams has his back. So that is cool. He cares a lot about issues of social justice, economic access, and voting rights. So like he is the kind of the perfect person to like take on what's wrong with Georgia.
Yeah.
And this is a quote from Stacey Abrams about Reverend Warnock. She said, "Georgia deserves a proven leader like Raphael Warnock, a son of South Georgia who knows our state inside and out. He's traveled its highways, visited its towns, and served its people for decades." So I've been excited about him. And then there's a handful of people that are running against David Perdue. The one that stood out the most to me is a woman named Teresa Tomlinson. She basically said that she would only run if Stacey Abrams didn't run, and then Stacey Abrams didn't run for senator, which made a lot of people sad, but she doesn't want to be a senator, I guess.
She's doing so many other things
exactly.
Right now.
Yeah, they're working on some huge systemic issues, and I'm glad we have somebody so smart doing that. But yeah, so as soon as Stacey Abrams declined, Teresa Tomlinson entered the race. So go to the polls in the primary to at least vote for Raphael Warnock, because God, Kelly Loeffler really sucks. And then I would also vote for Teresa Tomlinson, but John Ossoff is running and he seems totally fine also. So I got some dates that are specific to Georgia. The primary has been postponed from March 24th to May 19th. Every Georgia voter will be able to cast a vote by mail ballot for the May 19th primary, which is good. All of Georgia's active voters will be mailed absentee ballot request forms for the May 19th primary. So again, that primary election's on May 19th. Other important dates are October 5th is the general election registration deadline. There's early voting for the general election from October 12th to October 30th. And then, just like for everybody, the general election is on November 3rd. And here are some voting rules specific to Georgia. You do not need an excuse to get an absentee ballot in Georgia, which is good. You can request one at votesaveamerica.org, but you should be mailed one for the Georgia primary if you're already a registered voter. You cannot register the same day at the polls, so do it now. And you do need an ID, either a Georgia driver's license, a free Georgia voter ID, a U.S. passport, a military ID, or a government-issued employee ID, tribal ID, or certain student IDs. But if you want to check and make sure that what you have it will work, you can go to voteriders.org. And just a side note, these are pretty strict voting laws. How do they compare to what you have in Iowa?
I think they're more strict.
They're way more strict than in Illinois.
Yeah, I know Iowa's not. It's been a while since I voted in Iowa because I was in Illinois for a few years.
Oh,
but
right.
Yeah, it wasn't super strict anytime I voted in Iowa. And usually I voted absentee also, because like when I was in college, I still voted back home, like in my district and stuff. So, but yeah, it's never been that strict. You also don't need like an excuse to vote absentee
That's
here
good.
or anything either. It's pretty easy. Voting early is pretty easy.
Yeah.
I don't think I needed my driver's license.
That's good. That's good
I
too.
did vote here last time. I don't remember, but I don't think I did.
But so these voter ID laws are like kind of a perfect example. So, Georgia is a red trifecta, meaning that the governor and both state legislatures, the Georgia House and the Georgia Senate, are all Republican owned. Illinois is the opposite. We're a blue trifecta in that we have a Democratic governor and both branches of Congress are democratically owned. And there's not any additional voter fraud in Illinois than there is in Georgia. But in Georgia, there are way more barriers for people to vote. But I don't know, just as a reminder, this is a democracy, so we are in favor of people voting. So when people are trying to block that, it's pretty fucked up.
Okay, we did have to show ID at the last Iowa one that I actually showed up for in person.
Oh, yeah, you did?
I was like, yeah, I'll look at this up because I don't remember if I did or not because, again, it was a long time ago. Like, I think the last time I actually voted in person in Iowa was when I voted for Obama.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in 2012. That was the last time I actually voted in person in Iowa and didn't either absentee or was in a different state. So
that would have been your first presidential election that you could vote in.
Yep, it was the first one I could. Yeah. Yeah, I need to show up more like actually on voting day or voting early so I can get that sticker. But
Illinois mails you the sticker when you do
nice.
absentee voting, which is truly like they see me as a person. I was going to go vote in person until COVID-19 happened because I wanted the sticker. And when I opened that envelope and there was a sticker in there, I was so happy.
That's so wonderful. Yeah, I always vote absentee, even when I like don't actually have a reason to.
Yeah. Well, it's easier to fill out your ballot at home, I think.
Yeah, well, exactly.
So much less pressure.
Especially, because like if it's like, oh shoot, I forgot. I don't look at the judges.
I need to look up
Google my judges.
Comptroller.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Solicitor General.
It's way easier. Yeah. So I prefer it, and I'm glad that I live in a state where I can do that. Where I can be like, absentee.
Yeah.
But
so there's lots of stuff going on in Georgia. There's a lot of bad stuff going on right now, but there's a lot of potential for really great stuff to happen in Georgia. I kind of look at it as like your work in Georgia goes twice as far because you are trying to flip 2 Senate seats. So there's a lot you can do from in Georgia. There's also a lot you can do from outside of Georgia. You can donate to Raphael Warnock or other candidates. You can I wrote 20 more letters to Georgia voters because I felt so bad for them after doing all this research. Or you can donate to a fund called Ditch Mitch or Die Trying, which is dedicated to flipping the Senate blue. And I think it's a great name. Yeah. So
love it.
That's a good place to put your money if you have some extra money. But yeah, I think adopt a Georgia Senate race to support. The election is really not that far away. Like I said, Democrats only need 4 Senate seats to take back the majority. And there's 2 up in Georgia by itself. So yeah, you can go to swingleft.org or votesaveamerica.org. If you are like really overwhelmed and really have no idea where to start, but want to do something about what's going on here, like about democracy eroding before our eyes, Swing Left will actually do like one-on-one individual meetings with you, which is really cool because different states need different things. I haven't done one, but they offer that, which I think is really cool. And then I think it's just really important to remember that there are no wasted movements, which is something that Andrea Chalupa says on Gaslit Nation a lot. So if Georgia doesn't like completely transform into a blue state in 2020, there's no wasted movements. Like change takes time. It isn't incremental. It's not like it like resets. So it's not like the work that you do between now and November resets when, I don't know, if David Perdue happens to get reelected or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important to remember, especially like right now when it feels like kind of hopeless times in a lot of cases. I mean, Joe Biden's going to be the Democratic nominee. There is a pandemic. We are all stuck at home or not stuck at home, and we wish we were because we don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And Donald Trump is doing all these press briefings and telling people to inject Lysol. And, you know, like, it seems like a hopeless, crazy times. But keeping in mind that, like, that's movements. That's how they work, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's progress. Every little action is progress in some way.
I think one of the other helpful things that they mentioned on that podcast was kind of like, you have to start thinking more in terms of like decades of like work that you're trying to do, which is a little bit daunting, but it's also like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, it took a long time. Honestly, it took not enough time, but like for the country to take this downward turn, it's going to take some time to like turn it back around again.
Yeah. And yeah, it's frustrating and it's daunting, but also like, you know, we're all trying for the same good of, you know, the people.
Yeah, for sure.
Country and the earth, because like we talked about earlier about like climate change and all those kinds of things too. Like that's another issue that's just going to keep being a bigger issue. So yeah, we're all trying to paddle up the same creek.
Right. Yep. So you guys are listening to this because you want to be more responsible, active citizens, which is awesome. If you know anybody in Georgia, a Georgia resident who wants to be a more active, responsible citizen, it would be awesome if you could send this episode to them. It's less than an hour, and it hopefully gives you everything that you need to know about what's going on in Georgia politics for the November 2020 election, and we would really appreciate it. And we will be back next week with another swing state.
Yes, we will. And, you know, if you've got any questions about swing states or your local elections or how things work or topics you want us to cover, slide into our DMs at FYMI Pod on Instagram and Twitter. We would love to hear from you. Or if you've got any really exciting stories about talking to your parents about showing up to vote or registering to vote, especially if you're in one of those swing states like Georgia. Right now, like, let us know because it would make us happy.
Yeah, we'll read stuff. Oh my God, like my favorite murder
read
reads.
It on the pod or share it.
Sure. We're not about to be like bombarded by emails. Like if you email us, we will see it and we'll be like, yay. So if you
we don't have that many other things to do. I just started a blog about cats. So
okay, I'm gonna go have a slice of apple pie.
Yeah, I'm gonna go have a drink.
Nice. All right, we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye. Thank you guys so much for listening to For Your Misinformation. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast, and if you like it, give us a rating and a review. It helps us find more listeners, and the more of us there are, the better.
And make sure you're following along on Instagram and Twitter at FYMI Pod.
Shout out to Kyle Dibdahl for the intro and outro music, Hope Dye for the podcast art, and Ben Schlofelt for the audio production.
We come out with new episodes every Monday.